I never thought a mailbox could change my life. It was a Tuesday, a day so normal it should have been forgettable. The kind of day where you measure life in coffee cups and grocery lists. The kind of day where nothing should happen, and yet everything did. When I pulled into my driveway, I noticed the envelope tucked into the seam of my mailbox. At first, I thought it was a flyer or some cheap pizza coupon. I almost ignored it. But something about the official-looking logo, Homeowners Association, bold and severe, made my stomach flip. I slid the paper out and unfolded it with a careless flick. Notice of violation. Mailbox color non-compliant. Fine. $200. I stared at it, blinking. Beige. My mailbox was beige. It had been beige for 15 years, the exact same shade as every other mailbox on the street. A tight, disbelieving laugh escaped me. Surely, this was a mistake, but deep down, a prickling sense of unease stirred. Because 3 days earlier, Marty Lang had been elected president of our HOA. I'd seen him swaggering around, shaking hands, talking big about cleaning up the neighborhood. At the election meeting, I'd sat quietly in the back, arms crossed, listening as he made vague promises about property values and curb appeal, all while waving his arms like he was running for national office instead of neighborhood watch. I should have known. I should have seen it coming. I told myself not to overreact. Don't make enemies, I whispered in the bathroom mirror that night, dabbing cold cream onto my tired face. Just fix the mailbox. But when I repainted it, the exact same beige, the fines didn't stop. First, it was the garden gnome on my front lawn. Unapproved lawn ornament. Fine. $150. Then it was the trash cans. Trash containers visible from street after pickup. Fine. $350. I remembered sprinting home from work one evening, heart hammering, just to wheel them back behind the fence, only to find a violation notice already taped to my door. It didn't matter what I did. I was a target, and Marty Lang? Every time we crossed paths, he gave me a slow, smug smile. First, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was being strict with everyone. Maybe it wasn't personal, but when I compared notes with my neighbors, Mary in 12B, George in 14A, they shook their heads. No fines. No warnings. Not even a passive-aggressive email. Just me. Only me. I stopped opening my mailbox without bracing myself first. My hands trembled when I touched the metal slot. I'd steel my spine, telling myself it was silly to be scared of an envelope, then flinch anyway when another pale sheet of paper fluttered into my hand. $200, $400, $500, each one slicing deeper. Not just into my savings account, but into my sense of safety. My little suburban haven, the house I'd bought after my divorce, my fresh start, was becoming a battlefield, and I was losing, financially, emotionally, mentally. Every night, I sat at my kitchen table with a calculator and a cold cup of tea, trying to figure out how to pay the mortgage, the property taxes, and now the endless fines without draining my retirement account. It wasn't sustainable. I couldn't keep going like this, but what choice did I have? The first time Marty delivered a fine in person, I was pruning my rose bushes. I heard the rumble of a truck, loud, aggressive. Before I saw it, a massive red pickup, oversized tires, American flags waving from each corner. Marty climbed out, holding a clipboard like a scepter. Afternoon, Cynthia, he drawled, handing me a notice. I wiped my dirt-streaked hands on my jeans and took it. Failure to maintain curb appeal. Fine. $1,000. I felt my pulse spike so fast it made me dizzy. My house was neat. My grass was mowed. My flower beds were tidy. I wanted to scream. Instead, I forced my mouth into a smile so wide it ached. Thanks, Marty, I said sweetly. I know you're just doing your job. He blinked, momentarily thrown off, then grinned. Glad you understand, he said, tipping his baseball cap before sauntering back to his truck. I watched the dust trail his tires kicked up, my hands clenched so tightly around the clipboard that my knuckles turned white. Inside, something snapped. It wasn't a loud break, not a crack or a shatter. It was quieter, more dangerous. The kind of break that rearranges you. That night, I opened my laptop. I pulled up the county property records. Then the HOA's financial reports. Then the court filings from nearby towns. I scrolled through tax documents, public meeting minutes, anything that had Marty Lang's name on it. It was tedious work, hours blurred into each other. My eyes burned from the screen's blue light, and my spine ached from hunching over my dining room table. But with every click, my anger sharpened from a blunt object into a blade. There it was, the trail, unfiled permits, mysterious vendor payments to companies linked to Marty's golf buddies. Inflated contracts for services never rendered. It was all there, hiding in plain sight. Corruption, plain and simple. He wasn't just being petty. He was running a racket, and I had been paying for it. Literally. In the mirror above my bathroom sink, I caught a glimpse of myself. Same brown eyes, same faint lines around my mouth and eyes, but something different shimmered beneath the surface. Cold, hard, hungry. I was no longer just a woman with a garden gnome and a beige mailbox. I was a woman with a mission. Marty Lang had declared war. He just didn't know I was about to fight back. And I wouldn't fight fair. I wouldn't fight nice. I would smile. I would nod, and all the while I would sharpen the knives. Over the next few weeks, I became a different Cynthia. I volunteered for HOA events. I brought homemade cookies to meetings. I laughed at Marty's jokes, even the ones that made my skin crawl. The 4th of July barbecue, I clapped when he gave a speech about neighborhood pride. I played the part so well that neighbors started calling me Saint Cynthia. If only they knew. Every laugh, every handshake, every cheerful thank you was a brick in the trap I was building. Inside, I hated every second. There were nights I sat in my car after HOA gatherings, gripping the steering wheel until my fingers went numb, just trying to breathe through the self-loathing. But I pushed through it, because this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every fine, every envelope, every smug little smirk Marty had tossed my way like a bone to a dog. I wasn't a dog. I wasn't even a neighbor anymore. I was a storm, and I was gathering strength. Looking back, I realized there was one moment, one tiny, fragile moment, where I could have stopped. I could have let it go, paid the fines, moved away, started over. But I didn't. I chose war, and standing there under the buzzing porch light, clutching another $500 violation notice in my hand, I whispered 3 words that sealed my fate. Not yet, Marty. I folded the paper neatly, tucked it under my arm, and walked into the house, smiling, always smiling. The real game was just beginning. The truck rumbled into view before I even heard it. Sunlight bounced off the chrome grille like a warning flare, and 2 enormous flags rippled behind it, red, white, and blue, stretched so wide they almost touched the hedges on either side of my driveway. Marty Lang parked at an angle, blocking half the street. He hopped out, clipboard in hand, boots crunching on the pavement. In his mirrored sunglasses, I could see my reflection, tiny, tense, fists balled in the pockets of my jacket. "Afternoon, Cynthia," he said, in that overly familiar drawl that made my skin crawl. I managed a smile. "Hey there, Marty." He handed me another fine, this one handwritten, failure to maintain curb appeal. Fine. $1,000,8,000. For what? A single dandelion poking through the lawn? A garden hose coiled slightly off-center. I felt the blood rush to my ears, my heart banging hard enough to echo in my teeth. I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled wider. "You know," I said, forcing a bright, almost giddy laugh, "you're just doing your job." "I totally get it." He blinked, thrown off balance. Then he grinned, that wide, self-satisfied smirk I'd come to despise. "Glad you understand, Cynthia. Not everyone does." He tipped an imaginary hat and swaggered back to his truck. As he drove off, my smile collapsed. My hands trembled so badly I nearly tore the notice in half, but I didn't. I folded it, tucked it under my arm, and walked back into my house. That night, as the sun sank in a smear of pink across the horizon, I opened my laptop and typed his name into a private browser. Marty Lang. It was time to stop being scared. It was time to dig. Research became my new nightly ritual. After dinner, I'd clear the table, wipe down the counters, and settle in with my laptop and a strong cup of coffee. I combed through public records, property deeds, business registrations, court filings. Slowly, a pattern began to emerge. Companies with names like Patriot Fence Company and Freedom Lawn Services, all receiving lucrative HOA contracts, and all tracing back to people in Marty's social circle, overpriced security upgrades that nobody remembered approving, maintenance jobs billed for but never performed, a network of handshakes and kickbacks concealed under layers of red, white, and blue branding. The deeper I dug, the more my stomach churned. IT wasn't just petty fines and personal vendettas. IT was theft, and we were the victims. Still, evidence alone wouldn't be enough. Marty was smart, cunning. He knew how to cover his tracks just well enough to confuse the casual observer. I had to get closer. I changed tactics. To the next HOA meeting, I baked muffins. Lemon poppy seed, Marty's favorite. I offered to help streamline communications by managing the HOA's email list. I stayed late after meetings to help clean up, casually glancing over any documents left behind. I made myself indispensable. Saint Cynthia. They called me. I laughed along with them, even as the nickname made my skin prickle. Every smile, every compliment, every nod of approval from Marty was a fresh wound and a fresh opportunity. There were moments I almost lost my nerve. Late at night, staring at myself in the bathroom mirror, I barely recognized the woman looking back. Was I really any better than him? Manipulating, deceiving, smiling through my teeth. Was I becoming exactly what I hated? The thought gnawed at me, but then I'd remember the fines, the humiliation, the way my stomach twisted every time I pulled into my own driveway, wondering what new punishment awaited me. No, I wasn't like Marty. I wasn't doing this for greed or power. I was doing this for survival and for justice. The first major break came at a casual Friday night poker game hosted by the HOA board. Marty invited me personally, slapping me on the back like we're old war buddies. Gotta have our lucky charm, he said with a booming laugh. I laughed, too. Inside, I wanted to scream. I brought homemade cookies. I lost graciously at poker. I sipped my soda slowly, pretending to be more buzzed than I was, and I listened. Oh, how I listened? Loose lips, too many beers, bragging about sweet deals, and kicking a little back to the team. Half-joking remarks about creative accounting. I recorded everything on my phone, slipped discreetly into my jacket pocket. Later, I transcribed it all, each line another nail in Marty's coffin. Emails, bank transfers, vendor contracts signed without community approval. IT was all there, all waiting. The hardest part was keeping the act up. Every time Marty complimented me, every time he trusted me with another small task, like filing receipts or confirming vendor payments, every time a neighbor clapped me on the shoulder and thanked me for being the glue that held the community together. I wanted to tell them the truth. I wanted to scream it from the rooftops, but I didn't. Not yet. Patience had gotten me this far. Patience would win the war. I kept smiling. Much smiling. Until my cheeks ached and my soul felt like it was shrinking inside my body. I started dreaming about it, night after night. Visions of confrontation danced behind my eyelids. In one dream, I stood in front of the entire neighborhood, a thick stack of papers in my hand, as Marty shrank into nothingness. In another, I was alone in my house as investigators pounded on my door, demanding to know why I'd kept quiet so long. Both dreams ended the same way, with a sense of hollow victory, a taste of ash on my tongue. Revenge was a meal best served cold, they said. But nobody talked about how bitter it could be. I kept a journal, hidden at the back of my closet, where I wrote everything down. Every violation notice, every whispered conversation, every piece of evidence. Not just because I needed a record, but because some part of me needed to remember why I was doing this. I needed to remember that I hadn't started this fight. Marty had, and I was simply, finally, answering it. The final straw came 6 weeks later, a new special assessment. Emergency security upgrades, Marty announced at the HOA meeting, chest puffed out like a rooster. Each homeowner would need to pay $10,000. Immediately, people murmured, uneasy. Marty waved off their concerns. "It's for your own safety," he said, smiling wide, and somehow everyone nodded along except me. Inside, I felt a calmness settle over me, a stillness I'd never known. It was time. The trap was built. The pieces were in place. The storm was ready to break, and when it did, Marty Lang wouldn't know what hit him. I smiled sweetly, just like always. "Sounds reasonable, Marty," I said. My voice steadied. He beamed. I beamed back. But inside, I whispered to myself, "Smile, Cynthia. The best is yet to come." There's a particular quiet that settles over a neighborhood after dark. A stillness so complete that even the sound of your own breathing feels intrusive. That's when I worked best. After everyone else had gone to bed, I sat at my dining table, a single lamp casting a pool of light over the piles of papers and open files. My laptop hummed, tabs multiplying like rabbits. Every page was another breadcrumb, another link in the chain that would eventually pull Marty Lang down. I wasn't just looking for mistakes anymore. I was building a case, somewhere between court documents and vendor directories. I found it, a payment for emergency fence repairs on a property that had no visible fence at all, a $25,000 check signed by Marty himself. The contractor listed? A shell company registered to a P.O. box in the next town over. Digging a little further, I found that the address was linked to a man photographed at Marty's last 4th of July barbecue, beer in one hand, thumbs up with the other. The pieces snapped together with a sickening click. Fraud. Clear, unmistakable. Arrogant fraud. He hadn't even tried to hide it well, because who would ever look? Who would dare? The more I uncovered, the more reckless Marty seemed. Invoices for security cameras that had never been installed. Receipts for community landscaping filed during months when the grass had grown knee-high. Double-billed maintenance fees where services were claimed twice and paid twice without a single shrub trimmed. I created a spreadsheet, line by painful line, tracking every questionable transaction. By the time I finished, the total amount of misappropriated funds hovered near 6 figures. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the numbers until they blurred. All that money, stolen from my neighbors, from me, from the community we had built. Flawed though it was, and we had trusted him. Trust. That word stuck in my throat like a splinter. I thought about my neighbors, sweet Mrs. Andrews, who lived alone after her husband passed, the Martinez family, saving every penny to send their daughter to college, George from 14A, who had mowed my lawn after my surgery without asking for a dime. They were counting on people like Marty to protect our neighborhood, and he had betrayed all of us. The hardest thing wasn't finding the evidence. IT was keeping it hidden. I printed copies of everything, stashing them in a battered manila folder labeled recipes. To hide them in plain sight, a flash drive went into a hollowed-out book on my shelf. I backed up the files on a cloud account under a fake name. Paranoid? Maybe, but I'd learned the hard way that paranoia was just another name for survival. During the day, I played the part better than ever. Muffins for meetings, cookie platters for neighborhood cleanup days. Handwritten thank you notes to board members. Marty loved it. He ate it up. "You're the heart of this neighborhood, Cynthia," he said one afternoon, clapping me on the back so hard I almost stumbled. "Just doing my part," I said, smiling so wide my cheeks ached. Inside, I felt nothing. Meanwhile, tensions in the neighborhood were rising. More people grumbled about the endless fines. More emergency assessments appeared without warning. Whispers of dissatisfaction floated through block parties and sidewalk chats, but fear kept them compliant. Marty had made examples of dissenters. Homeowners who challenged the board found themselves fined into submission or dragged into endless compliance hearings. The message was clear: resist and suffer. I realized something chilling then. IT wasn't just about money. IT was about control. Marty wasn't content with skimming funds. He wanted obedience. He wanted to own us, right down to the color of our mailboxes and the length of our grass, and he'd nearly succeeded. Until now, until me. The final piece fell into place on a rainy Thursday night. I received an anonymous tip, a scanned copy of a contractor's invoice. sent to my burner email address. The invoice. Detailed work that had supposedly been done on Marty's own house. A security upgrade paid for with HOA funds. I cross-referenced it with Marty's property records. He had installed a brand new, state-of-the-art security system, paid for by us. Every camera, every sensor, every alarm, our dues, funding his personal fortress. The audacity of it made me dizzy. That was it. The smoking gun. I sat in my living room, the rain tapping against the windows, and stared at the mountain of evidence before me. It was enough, more than enough, enough to bring the whole rotten empire crashing down, but I couldn't do it alone. I needed the right moment, the right audience, the right storm, and it was coming, soon. Very soon. In the meantime, I moved carefully, double-checking my locks, watching for unfamiliar cars parked near my house, deleting my search history every night. Every nerve in my body felt stretched thin, vibrating with tension, but there was a strange kind of peace. I had a purpose, a mission, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. I was ready. One evening, as I was leaving a meeting, Marty caught up with me in the parking lot. "Hey, Cynthia," he said, clapping a hand on my shoulder. I turned, heart pounding, masking it with a smile. "Yes, Marty. You're doing great work. Really. You've got leadership potential." He grinned. "Ever think about running for the board next year?" I laughed, high and bright. "Oh, Marty," I said, "I think my plate's full enough." He chuckled, wagging a finger at me. "Don't sell yourself short. We need good people like you." I smiled until my face hurt. "I'll think about it." And I meant it, not because I wanted to join the board, but because by next year, there wouldn't be a board left to run. That night, as I filed the last of my evidence into neat, labeled folders, I felt a calmness settle over me. The storm was almost here. And when it broke, it wouldn't just cleanse the neighborhood. It would wash Marty Lang's lies straight into the gutter where they belonged. For the first time in months, I slept soundly. And oh nightmares, and oh guilt, only dreams of a future where the sun rose over a free neighborhood. And I, Saint Cynthia, smiling sweetly, would be the one to make it happen. The first sign that everything was about to change came in the form of a letter. Unlike the cold, typed violation notices that usually filled my mailbox, this one was hand-delivered, slipped under my door in a plain white envelope. Inside, a single line, typed neatly on a piece of standard printer paper. "They're watching you." No signature. No return address. Just a warning. I stood there for a long time, the paper trembling in my hands. Someone knew. Someone was paying attention. But I wasn't scared. I was ready. I spent the next few days setting my plan into motion. First, I created a burner email account, anonymous and untraceable. From there, I sent an anonymous tip, complete with carefully curated evidence, to the county compliance office. I attached the forged invoices, the double-billed receipts, and, most importantly, the security upgrade payments made to Marty's private residence. Then I waited. The waiting was the hardest part. Every knock at the door made my heart race. Every phone call sent a shiver down my spine. But outwardly, I remained the perfect neighbor. I attended every meeting, brought even more baked goods, smiled brighter than ever. If Marty suspected anything, he didn't show it. He was too busy pushing his latest scheme, a new special assessment, requiring every homeowner to pay $10,000 for emergency security enhancements. He pushed it hard, rallying the board, issuing stern letters, and holding informational sessions at the community center. I attended every one, sat in the front row, nodded along like a loyal foot soldier, all while the noose tightened. The night of the big vote, the community center was packed. Neighbors filled every folding chair. Standing shoulder to shoulder along the back wall, reporters lurked at the edges, pretending to check their phones, but clearly listening. Marty stood at the front of the room, beaming with the kind of confidence only ignorance can breed. "This assessment is necessary for the safety and future of our neighborhood," he boomed, slapping the podium for emphasis. A few scattered claps, mostly silence. The mood had shifted, the crowd was restless. Whispers rippled through the room. Doubt. Suspicion. Anger. Marty didn't notice. He was already celebrating in his mind. He never saw the two plainclothes investigators step into the back of the room. He didn't notice when they exchanged a nod and approached the front. He didn't even realize something was wrong until one of them cleared his throat loudly. "Marty Lang," the man said, holding up a badge. The room fell silent. Marty blinked, confused. "What is this?" he said, voice rising. The investigator held up a folder thick with documents. "We're here to seize the HOA's financial records for an ongoing investigation into fraud and embezzlement." Gasps from the crowd. Marty's face drained of color. He opened his mouth to protest, but before he could, I stood up. I walked calmly to the front of the room, and without a word, I handed the second investigator my own folder. Emails, invoices, receipts, recordings, proof. Solid, irrefutable proof. The investigator flipped through it, eyebrows lifting. He nodded once, sharply. "Thank you, ma'am." Marty stared at me, stunned. "You," he croaked. I smiled sweetly. Saint Cynthia, the heart of the neighborhood, the woman who had spent months smiling in his face while sharpening the knife. "Just doing my part," I said softly. The next hours passed in a blur. Investigators combed through boxes of records. Neighbors buzzed, muttering in shocked clusters. Reporters scribbled notes, cameras flashing. Marty tried to rally the board, but no one listened. His allies slunk away, one by one, leaving him alone at the front of the room. He looked smaller somehow, deflated, broken, and I watched, not with glee, not with triumph, but with a cold, quiet satisfaction. He had done this to himself. I had simply held up the mirror. The investigators packed up the last of the evidence. Marty was escorted outside. Not in handcuffs, not yet, but it was only a matter of time. Neighbors turned to me, their faces a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. "You saved us," Mrs. Andrews whispered, pressing my hand. "I just did what needed to be done," I said, and I meant it. For once, there was no need to fake the smile on my face. It came naturally, did easy, did real. In the following days, the news spread like wildfire. Local HOA president investigated for embezzlement. The headlines read, "Homeowners held emergency meetings, voting to dissolve the HOA entirely." The special assessments were canceled, the fines were forgiven, and Marty Lang, he vanished. Rumor had it he sold his house at a loss and left town in the dead of night. Good riddance. For me, the victory was bittersweet. I had won. But the cost had been steeped. I wasn't the same woman who had planted roses and garden gnomes and laughed over coffee with her neighbors. I was harder, sharper, but also freer, and that, I realized, was worth everything. A month later, I stood in my front yard, for sale signs swinging gently in the breeze. The offers rolled in, higher than I ever dreamed. Without Marty and his corruption, the neighborhood's value soared. I accepted the highest bid and signed the papers with a steady hand. Then, with nothing but 2 suitcases and a heart lighter than it had been in years, I boarded a plane. Destination: Hawaii. New home. New life. Freedom. As the plane lifted off, I looked out the window at the receding ground. No more violations. No more fines. No more Marty Lang. Just endless sky ahead. And for the first time in a long while, I smiled. Not out of strategy or survival, but out of sheer, uncontainable joy. The storm had passed, the sun was shining, and the future was mine. The first thing I noticed was the air, warm, soft, perfumed with the faint scent of plumeria. It wrapped around me as I stepped off the plane, a silent whisper that I was somewhere new, somewhere untouched by the cold battles I had fought. Hawaii. New beginning. The days melted into each other. Slow and golden. Morning coffee sipped on a lanai overlooking the ocean. Barefoot. Walks on sandy beaches, the water warm and welcoming. No meetings. No violation notices. No whispered fears. Only the rhythmic lullaby of waves breaking against the shore. Freedom. Real. Tangible freedom. I bought a small cottage near the beach, painted a soft shade of seafoam green. It wasn't large. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. No petty rules. Just a worn picket fence, a cheerful mailbox, painted any color I pleased, and a garden filled with wild hibiscus and sunflowers that reached greedily for the sky. I planted a new garden gnome in the front yard, grinning at the tiny rebellion, a symbol, a reminder of what I'd survived, of what I'd claimed. Most days, I woke up with the sun, letting its warmth coax me from sleep. I learned the names of my neighbors slowly, over shared cups of coffee and casual conversations at the market. Here, nobody cared if your grass grew too tall. Nobody measured your mailbox. They cared about fishing conditions, about whose mango tree was bearing fruit, about when the next community luau would be. Simple things, real things. And yet, some nights, when the stars scattered across the velvet sky and the ocean sang a deeper song, the memories crept and I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling fan turning slowly overhead, and think about the woman I had become, the quiet rage, the careful deceit, the battles fought not with fists, but with patience and precision. Had I lost something essential in the process? Had I become too sharp, too brittle? The questions floated like driftwood in the tide of my mind. But then morning would come again, with its golden light and the scent of salt and flowers, and I would remind myself, some victories aren't clean, some battles scar you, but scars are not weaknesses. They are proof that you survived, that you fought for your place in the sun and won. Sometimes, letters would arrive from old neighbors, updates about the old street, how without the HOA, the neighborhood had flourished, how families painted their homes cheerful colors, planted gardens, built tree houses, how laughter echoed down the sidewalks where once there had only been fear. They thanked me over and over. I accepted their thanks with grace. But in my heart, I knew the truth. I hadn't saved them. I'd simply reminded them they could save themselves. One evening, as the sun sank in a blaze of orange and purple, I sat on the beach with a notebook in my lap. I wrote a letter, not to anyone in particular, not to be sent, just words, a promise to myself. I promised to live lightly. Forgive myself for the choices I'd had to make. Remember the strength it took to smile when everything inside me screamed to fight. Honor the woman who refused to be crushed. Never, ever, let anyone make me small again. The tide crept higher, foamy fingers kissing my toes. The sky darkened, and I let the wind carry my whispered vow out over the water, into the endless embrace of the horizon. Free, whole, unbreakable, at last. In the end. It wasn't the destruction of Marty Lang or the collapse of the corrupt HOA that defined me. It was what came after. The quiet rebuilding, the soft healing, the choice to step out of the shadows of rage and into the light of something better. I had won. Not just against Marty. Not just against injustice, but against fear, against bitterness, against the part of me that had once believed I was powerless. I wasn't powerless, I never had been, and as the stars blinked into existence above me, one by one I smiled. Not a smile of strategy, not a mask, but a true, fierce, luminous smile, because the future was mine, because I had made it so, because, finally, I was free.